Okay, so I just got done watching the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, and it's alright. It's really not anything offensive, I would say, or worth writing home about. Now, I have to say that for the most part, if you like the series Rebels, you're probably going to like this show. If you didn't like Rebels, you're probably not gonna like this show. In a nutshell, this really is Rebels Season 5, but in live action format. And there's a good reason why I say that, because for the most part, it takes place 10 years after Rebels, after Ezra Bridger and Admiral Thrawn have disappeared. Apparently they were blasted into another galaxy, another part of the galaxy? I don't know, it's kind of confusing. The whole plot behind the series is to bring Thrawn back into the picture so that Filoni can go and have his movie, which will probably be Heir to the Empire. There are things I actually did enjoy about the series, but there are a lot of things I didn't enjoy about it. It comes with a lot of the typical Disney tropes that we've come to see in Star Wars and Marvel and anything that comes out by Disney. I'm sure you can take a guess what they are, quite honestly. It is a show that is built on a house of bad ideas, and we'll get into that in a moment. I've certainly seen worse Star Wars, such as The Mandalorian Season 3, all of the sequel trilogy. I know the bar is set pretty low right now. Biggest issue I have with this series is Rosario Dawson. She is nothing like the Ahsoka that we got from the Clone Wars or Rebels, and that character really is Ashley Eckstein, and I'm not sure why. Why, Disney, did you not cast her to play Ahsoka? She comes off as your typical female protagonist in most of Disney these days. Bland and uninteresting, which sucks because the character is actually pretty good in the Clone Wars, and I thought she was also good in Rebels, despite the fact I think that she should have died, because all of this is canon breaking. If you saw the season of Book of Boba Fett where Ahsoka was in it, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of things, like, why was Ahsoka never mentioned by Ben Kenobi to Luke Skywalker? Makes absolutely no sense. If she was dead, yeah, that would make sense. No point in bringing her up. Episode 1 starts off with the New Republic transporting a high-value Imperial asset named Morgan Elsbeth, who is apparently the boss girl of the series, and also apparently Thrawn's #1 fan. Oh, and apparently she's a Witch of Dathomir, for reasons. But because this is Disney Star Wars, the captain of the ship is a man and completely stupid. Their ship is hailed by another ship, which is a shuttlecraft, and they basically tell them that they're Jedi. And rather than saying, you know what, that seems kind of sketchy, the captain's like, let's go call their bluff. And he lets them on the ship. Dumb. Here we are introduced to Ray Stevenson's character, Baylan Skoll. May he rest in peace, by the way. And I have to say, he is probably one of the more interesting characters of the series, and his acting is done pretty damn well. We also meet his apprentice, Shin Hati. Baylan is a former Jedi who happened to disappear at the end of the Clone Wars for reasons, and is now, I guess, a Dark Jedi or a mercenary. It's really not clear. I guess we'll probably find out as the series goes on. But he's helping Morgan to go and retrieve Thrawn. And this is where Ahsoka Tano comes in, and also the fact that this series is built on a house of really bad ideas because of plot conveniences and contrivances, and it doesn't make any sense. Ahsoka is after a map that would ultimately lead her to Ezra and potentially Thrawn. This is the information that Ahsoka got from Morgan before she turned her into the New Republic. So she's on this planet that is in ruins, and this is, like I said, where things don't make sense. This map happened to know where Ezra Bridger and Thrawn are, despite the fact that this thing has probably been buried here for centuries. The scene itself is rather prolonged and boring. Like I said, Ahsoka goes and recovers the map, and as soon as she exits out, she is attacked by assassin droids sent by the Dark Jedi. She easily defeats like 2 or 3 of them, and the remaining 3 decide to go all thermonuclear war on her. Seriously, these droids are packing something the equivalent of a nuclear bomb because it goes and decimates the ruin. If it wasn't for the fact that her droid shows up with the ship, she would have been caught up in the blast. Okay. okay, whatever. This is just one of many things where you're like, this doesn't make any logical sense. So they have the map now, and Ahsoka's droid, who is played by David Tennant, says he's having problems decrypting it, and there's only one person who can do it. And you guess you could say that she's technically the key to everything. This would be Sabine Wren. Now, it's been a number of years since I watched Rebels, and I don't recall Sabine actually being the apprentice to Ahsoka Tano, but apparently she was, or maybe that happened after the series. I don't know, but oh yeah, there's another thing I forgot to mention. Hera is also in the show. Hera also had a kid with, what's his name? Oh, of course, naturally I blank on his name. Shit. What's his name again? Kanan. Hera had a kid with Kanan, but this kid is like nowhere to be seen. Oh, she's also been promoted to a general. Because, of course, she was. Nope, not out there raising her kid. A general. I guess they retconned the kid part now. So she heads to Lothal to go and find Sabine. One thing I have to say that they did really well on is they made Lothal actually look like Lothal, including the Lothcats, which they did a pretty good job with the CGI on. I have to say the majority of these special effects were pretty decent in this series, for what it's worth. And I'm guessing this is the fact that Dave Filoni is basically in charge of this series, and he's not going to spare any expense because it's one of his characters that should be dead. So Ahsoka meets up with Sabine. Of course, it's kind of an uncomfortable meeting because this is the first time they've seen each other in years since apparently Ahsoka ditched her. And she brings her on board the ship and shows her the map and apparently a scan of the temple where they found the map. I'm assuming it's a temple because why wouldn't it be? And again, it doesn't make sense why it was even there to begin with. But like I said, because reasons. Sabine tells Ahsoka that she would like to take the map and the scans and go someplace where she can clear her head and investigate it. And of course, Ahsoka's like, hell no. But she gets distracted and Sabine sneaks off the ship with the scans and the map, where she promptly goes and decodes it because of course she can. That's how you get the plot to go forward, I guess. Now, we actually find out in episode 2 that David Tennant's droid basically feigned not being able to crack the code because he wanted Ahsoka to go and reunite with Sabine, which kind of does make sense. Now, Morgan tells Baylan to send his apprentice to Lothal because apparently she knows that Sabine was Ahsoka's apprentice. After she goes and decodes the map, she is promptly attacked by assassin droids. The assassin droids go and steal the map and destroy all the backups that she has. One manages to go and restrain Sabine. This is the part that doesn't make sense. It has a blaster over its shoulder and Sabine is trying to reach for it and it's doing nothing. I mean, at the very least, it could have like attempted to snap her neck or something, but okay, whatever. Because plot conveniences, she manages to get a hold of it and manages to go and blast the foot off of the droid. She then runs into her house and grabs Ezra's lightsaber and proceeds to go after the other droid. When she gets down the bottom, she sees the droid and Shin Hati, who she has to go and fight now. The fight, I have to say, is pretty decent, and it ends with Sabine getting stabbed. And of course she survives, because of course she can. Everybody since Maul, with the exception of Qui-Gon, can survive a gut shot with a lightsaber. And that's where episode 1 ends. Overall, I thought the episode was largely unoffensive, minus the Disney-isms that we've come to know and hate from current year Star Wars, but okay. The biggest problem I have with this series is the fact that it doesn't make any sense. From the map to Thrawn and Ezra being out, I guess, in another galaxy somewhere. Odds are if they had been blasted out to another galaxy, they should be dead. Natasha Liu Bordizzo did a pretty decent job as Sabine Wren. She could actually emote and act, which I thought was a bonus. Holy shit, a female in Star Wars that's not a plank of wood. Mary Elizabeth Winstead was pretty decent as Hera. Ivana Sakno as Shin Hati was also likewise decent, and so was Ray Stevenson as Baylan Skoll. And quite frankly, they were the more interesting parts of the series. The one thing I was actually rather shocked at is the fact that they have a male being the teacher to a female, because that's one of those things that you can't have in modern entertainment these days, a male mentor to a female. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be some sort of incompetent boob at some point. Because quite frankly, I'm waiting for the rug to be pulled out from under my feet. Like, you can't have Shin Hati be an actual villain, because vagina. Likewise, the same thing with Morgan Elsbeth, because vagina. They are typically just misunderstood or have been led astray by a man. In this case, it's probably going to be Thrawn. Like I said, overall, I found the performance of Rosario Dawson to be rather bland and uninteresting, and she's supposed to be the title character. And we basically have seen this with the 2 previous series she's been in. She acts nothing like Ahsoka Tano, and I know that the argument is going to be, well, she evolved as a character by changing her entire personality. The pacing of the episode is likewise also off-putting. There's times where you have a character speaking and there's a long dramatic pause, so you'll get like, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine, thank you. How about yourself?" "I'm doing great." And that honestly just makes the episode drag. And this problem persists into episode 2. In this episode, Ahsoka is largely pissed off at Sabine for losing the map, and it's about them trying to track it back down. Sabine is in the hospital recovering from her wounds, and why she's not in a Bacta tank is anybody's question. After a conversation with Sabine, Ahsoka decides to go back to her house, where she is attacked by the assassin droid that was still alive, just missing a foot, where she takes its head off. She then brings the droid's head back to Sabine, where she goes and recovers where it came from, which was Corellia. Meanwhile, the Dark Jedi head to this planet, and they go to the structure, which I'm going to call Space Stonehenge, where they go and call Morgan, saying that they've recovered the map. Morgan shows up and uses the map and Space Stonehenge to point the direction to where Thrawn is at. Rather convenient that that structure wasn't destroyed, because if it was, wow, they would be shit out of luck, wouldn't they? It's not as dumb as Rey holding up the knife and finding the throne room on the remains of the Death Star, but it's still pretty dumb, because after all, over thousands of years, things do shift in space, and it wouldn't line up after a while. But okay, it does in this case. Ahsoka and Hera then go to Corellia to investigate the assassin droid. It turns out that Morgan used to own a ship manufacturing facility there, which they proceed to go and check out. They find out that it is now a scrapyard where they're going and tearing down old Star Destroyers, where they're going and recycling their hyperspace cores and using them to build New Republic ships. Well, it turns out that everyone there at the facility is still on the payroll of Morgan, as they're actually building hyperspace drives for a giant space ring. We'll get into that in a moment. But this is where things get a bit heavy-handed, because it comes off as a criticism of capitalism, because the guy who's running the facility keeps talking about, wanting to make the investors happy. And I guess it's some sort of criticism not just on capitalism, but on corporations as well, much like Disney. One thing, too, that I thought was kind of funny is that the majority of the protocol droids in the series tend to be female for some reason. Because when they're at the facility, they're talking to the guy that runs the place, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we don't have any Assassin's droid here. None of them were repurposed. We have like load lifters and protocol droids and blah, blah, blah." When the female protocol droid's like, "Oh no, I saw an Assassin droid the other day." Well, technically, I guess it was like 5 days ago, but who's counting? So the guy is like, "Why didn't you report this?" And she's like, "Well, I was ordered by the assassin droid not to say anything." While this is going on, there is a shuttle that's taking off with one of the hyperspace drives, and they're trying to get it to stop. And of course, it's not going to stop. And that's when we find out basically that everybody's a traitor, and somebody yells for the Empire and starts shooting. So Ahsoka goes and jumps out and goes after them to try and stop them. And she's then stopped by a third Dark Jedi who happens to look like one of the Inquisitors, and he has an Inquisitor lightsaber. Hera then goes to the Phantom and goes to pursue the shuttle that's towing the hyperspace drive. I guess it's really just a hyperspace engine, but for some reason it has the hyperspace drive in it. That's not how things work technically, but okay, whatever. There's actually a pretty cool fight between Ahsoka and the third Dark Jedi. He then goes and proceeds to escape, jumping onto the shuttle with Shin Hati, and they escape. Meanwhile, Hera, using the Phantom, has Chopper go and place a tracking device on the shuttle right before it goes and makes the jump to hyperspace. When Hera was like, "I can't believe there's still people loyal to the Empire," Ahsoka looks at her and goes, "No, it's because greed." Meanwhile, back at the hospital, David Tennant's droid is talking to Sabine, pretending that he didn't know how to decode the map so he could get Sabine brought back into the fold. Sabine then goes home and pulls out her Mandalorian armor and proceeds to stare at it and then give herself the world's worst haircut. She then goes and contacts Ahsoka saying that she's ready, and the two go and sync up and become Lick sisters. I mean, master and apprentice. We then find out that Morgan is building this giant circle with hyperdrives put into it. Presumably, it has enough large hyperspace drives to be able to take them out of the galaxy to where Thrawn is. If I mention how this doesn't make any fucking sense. And for the most part, that's where the episode ends. Much like episode 1, I found the villains to be the most interesting part of the series. For the most part, I didn't find the episode to be cringy, much like episode 1. It was just largely dull and meandering at times. Is the show good? Not really. I would say it's largely palatable. In some ways, it kind of suffers from a lot of the issues I had with the first episode of Andor. It's just kind of dull and boring. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's certainly far from being the best thing I've ever seen. Now, the best way for me to put this is that when it comes to Star Wars, let's say that the original trilogy is a couple in their 20s having some great, amazing sex, and now that the franchise is in its 70s, all they want to do is take a nap. Sure, one of them manages to get it up on occasion, but those moments are few and far between. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if it's actually worth to continue reviewing. I guess whether I continue to do so will be determined by the interest in this video. Because if nobody's bothering watching it, there's really no point in reviewing it. Well, that's my take. What is yours? Is this a series that you're planning on watching or not? Leave a comment down below. And while you're at it, make sure to hit that thumbs up on your way out. And I have another video popping up right here talking about Blue Beetle. If you enjoyed this video, I suggest you go and check it out. I'll catch you next time, folks.